Life is full of danger, and sometimes we don't even see it coming. That's true at every stage of life, and it's certainly true in retirement. But what exactly are some of the most common hidden dangers and risks to a healthy retirement? It's that time again, you guessed it. Time to tune out the hype and focus on the facts. Yes, facts that matter to you, the income generation. Let's get started. Get ready to separate reality from myth.
With us, David Scranton.
David Scranton.
David Scranton.
David Scranton.
But David Scranton says, hey, not so fast.
How does it affect the markets? How does it affect the economy? Thanks to efficiencies in new technology and a staff of veteran analysts and portfolio managers, Sound Income Strategies strives to set new standards and bring institutional style investing to your portfolio. We discuss strategies for reducing risk a lot on this show, and particularly when it comes to financial risk. But even people who do a good job of protecting themselves against risk can still fall prey to hidden dangers in retirement. From underestimating inflation to having the wrong asset allocation for taking your required minimum distributions, there are plenty of hidden financial dangers, all of which we discuss frequently right here on the Income Generation. Today, we're going to focus specifically on dangers related to your health in this third installment in our four-part series entitled Hidden Risks to a Healthy Retirement. Joining us today will be Dr. Debbie Lines. She's a psychologist who partially specializes in disorders of elderly individuals. She's also an interior designer who uses her knowledge and experience to help create therapeutic environments.
Insomnia is one of the major health issues and mental health issues that happens to people as they age, and you don't really think about it.
We'll also have retired police investigator Rick Drew here. He's now the sales director at a retirement community called Covenant Village of Florida.
If you don't have a plan, it can devastate you, your family, and your family's finances. Have a medical surrogate, get someone as your POA, and don't be afraid to talk about it.
And we'll also talk to professional organizer Emma Jaluga. Her company helps seniors organize and downsize their homes.
Out-of-date food. They have closets in the home where they need to get into something and they reach too high and something falls on top of them. So they're the more dangers in the home per se.
But first, let's talk about a hidden risk that surprises many people. Why? Because it's hiding in plain sight. And that is retirement itself. You know, sometimes danger is hidden not because we don't see it, but because we mis-see it. We view it as something different from what it turns out to be, like a mirage in the desert. And believe it or not, studies do show that this is actually one of the most common hidden dangers in retirement. That is the reality of retired life being dramatically different from what you expected. Now, many people look forward to retirement as the ultimate summer vacation, a time when you can finally put away the stress and obligations of work life and devote as much time as you'd like to the things that you really enjoy. And for many people, that expectation does indeed become a reality. But for others, the reality is much different. There are new stresses and new frustrations that have the potential to emerge. Sometimes they're financial, but other times they're harder to pinpoint. Some people struggle to find a new sense of meaning or purpose in their lives, realizing for the first time how much that feeling in and of itself was tied to their career. Research shows that the potential impact of this hidden danger on your health is significant, and not just to mental health. Remember, mental, physical, and emotional health are all interrelated. Each one affects each other. In its ongoing U.S. Health and Retirement study, the Harvard School of Public Health looked at rates of heart attack and stroke, for example, among older men and women. More than 5,400 people participated in the study, which ended up finding out that those who had retired were 40% more likely to have had a heart attack or stroke than those who were still working. The increase was actually more pronounced during the first year of retirement, and then that increase leveled off after that. Now, those results are actually in line with other studies indicating that retirement itself is associated with a decline in health, and not just due to aging. In a summary of the Harvard study published in the journal Social Science and Medicine, lead author J. Robin Moon described retirement as a life course transition involving environmental changes that reshape health behaviors, social interactions, and psychosocial stresses, which also brings shifts in identity and preferences. Now, that description is certainly a far cry from the ultimate vacation, and it illustrates why the reality of retirement, compared to the expectation, can indeed be a hidden health risk for so many people. In her report, Dr. Moon goes on to say that common cultural perceptions about retirement are part of the problem, and that the Harvard study actually suggests that we need to look at retirement as a process rather than an event. So, if you're a regular viewer, you know that's something that I discuss frequently right here on The Income Generation. The idea of retirement as a process that carries with it more changes than most people realize. Changes that oftentimes are best managed with a lot of proactive planning and proactive preparation. Now, in terms of financial preparation, I talk about the importance of shifting from a growth mindset to an income mindset all the time. Working with an advisor to adjust your financial strategy from growth to income is a very, very important next step. But you know, it all starts with making that paradigm shift mentally. And for the sake of your health overall, making other mental shifts and changes in preparation for retirement may also be crucial. And you know, that's another reason I talk frequently about the importance of setting goals. Identifying your specific retirement goals and then creating a plan to achieve them contributes not only to your financial health by helping you determine your income needs, but it can also contribute to your mental and physical health. How? By giving you a sense of purpose, a sense of fulfillment that perhaps your career no longer provides. So ultimately, it can help lessen the danger that the reality of retirement will actually clash with expectations, potentially leading to frustration, depression, and increased risk of other health problems. And now it's time to welcome our first guest, Dr. Debbie Lines. She's a psychologist with over 30 years of experience as a counselor. Dr. Lines is also an interior designer, using her knowledge to create therapeutic environments for her clients. Thanks for joining us today here on The Income Generation.
I'm really excited, and thank you for having me today. Excited to talk with you.
Well, same here. So let's get right to it. Tell our Income Generation members, what are some of the biggest mental and emotional issues that people tend to struggle from after they retire, that are perhaps a little bit more unique to retirement than they are people's working lives?
Well, let's say this, if I can, David. I think it's hard to tease out mental, physical, or emotional things as we age. They sort of all rolled into one. And so I think that's the first thing we really need to look at when we're talking about retiring. I think that what I do psychologically is I talk a lot about creating a home sanctuary. And what that looks like is, how do I best design my living spaces for mental health and wellness? And so that's really what I do.
So when you say design living spaces, you know, we're talking today a lot about a lot of hidden dangers, if you will, that health dangers that come into fruition once people retire. What are some of these hidden dangers for which you find this redesigning, if you will, to be a benefit to the individual?
Well, again, David, we're talking about not being able to tease it apart, but let's think about it this way, and I am my demographic. Insomnia is one of the major health issues and mental health issues that happens to people as they age, and you don't really think about it. And mobility issues are huge when it comes to aging in place or aging at all. Other things are fear of falling. I think people oftentimes think about being afraid of forgetting. As we age, our brain still works beautifully, but oftentimes it works a bit slower. And I think we oftentimes wonder about that as a hidden mental health danger. I think the other thing, and something that a lot of people talk about and I feel really strongly about, is isolation. I think as people retire, it means their world oftentimes goes from large to smaller. And isolation can cause a lot of things, and that's anxiety and depression. So those are things specifically that I think we need to watch and worry about.
So when you help redesign people's homes and so on, I understand from a logistical standpoint how that might decrease the danger of falling or make them physically safer. But beside the physical aspect, how else does that help someone once they're retired, just from an emotional standpoint?
Well, let me tell you this. When you're retired, many of us have grandchildren and we have people coming into our house. So the goal of having a home and a house and a sanctuary is what I call visitability. It's allowing people of any age and any physical ability to come into my home and feel comfortable, right? So I think that's number one. I think it's really important that we can get people to come in and we can create an environment of health and wellness. How do we do that? We have entryways that are wide, number one. Number two, when you drive up to someone's home and it's clearly marked, okay, I don't have to worry about someone not being able to find it. Even more basic than that, heaven forbid I fall and hit my head or do something and I need to call an EMS. If my home is clearly marked, then I have easy access for anyone to come in. And these are things I don't really think people think about as mental health or safety issues, but they are. And they're really, really important. Even things like being able to open my window blind or close my window blind as I'm getting older and retired is something that you may not think about, but is easily manageable. Something as basic as a toilet, I know it sounds silly, but again, you're talking about my demographic. Being able to get in and out of bed, off and on a toilet is something that you really need to consider.
The basic needs, and also, like you said, the window blind, just being able to get some bright light in there puts people in a better mood. So,
well,
Dr. Lines, we need to take a commercial break right now. Stay with us for another section, if you will. We'll be right back here with more on the income generation. You're watching Dr. Lines and David Scranton. We'll be right back.
David J. Scranton, Amazon bestselling author, money manager, and national TV host, is on a mission to educate baby boomers about the need to shift from growth to income. If you're at or near retirement, focusing on income over growth can make all the difference in the quality of your retirement. Each week, David educates America on his Newsmax TV show, The Income Generation, where he provides special reports and more to teach baby boomers about the income model.
Call now for a free copy of David's latest book. Go to soundincomestrategies.com/income to find out more.
If you're near or in retirement, head over to theincomegeneration.com and download your special report written specifically for the needs of the income generation. Again, those born before 1966. I'm David Scranton, and you've been watching The Income Generation.
For behind-the-scenes photos, retirement planning tips, and upcoming giveaways, follow The Income Generation Show on Facebook. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch video clips, guest interviews, and to catch up on past episodes.
Peter Townsend was just 20 years old when he wrote that famous line, "I hope I die before I get old." Today, he's 73. Not old, but he's gaining on it. Now, whether he genuinely hoped or just expected not to reach his 70s is certainly open for debate. What isn't debatable is that longevity and living longer than you expected is one of retirement's most common and costly hidden health risks. It can be costly in a whole bunch of different ways, regardless of whether you remain physically healthy or suffer major medical problems in your later years. Obviously, most people want to live a long and healthy life. That's instinctive to a certain degree for most of us, but the reality is longevity also possesses increasing risks, especially for women. According to a report by the Society of Actuaries, 30% of women will survive to age 90, compared to just 20% for men. That being the case, 85% of women over the age 85 are widowed, compared to just 45% of men over age 85. This can have a disproportionate impact on financial security for women, especially widows who relied on their husband's pension or the husband's Social Security for income. But the impact on financial health is only part of the danger. The longer you live, the greater the chances you'll suffer significant losses. friends, your spouse. Even the possibility of outliving your children becomes greater the longer you live. No matter your level of physical or financial health, the challenge of dealing with grief again and again and again does indeed take a huge emotional toll. And naturally, the longer you live, the greater the chance of dealing with a major medical event also. And even if it isn't an injury or illness that threatens your financial security, it might be one that greatly decreases your quality of life. It's no secret, of course, that longevity rates are longer than ever before. I make that point frequently on this show to emphasize the importance of planning for up to 30 years or more in retirement. Longevity is just one of the primary reasons it's so important to make the shift before or early on in your retirement from strategies focusing on growth to those focusing on asset protection and income. But making that shift is only the first step. Protecting your financial health from the risks of longevity is an ongoing process that takes the right professional guidance. And as I've explained before, a financial advisor who specializes in protection and income, to me, is kind of like a pilot flying at 30,000 feet. From his perspective, the horizon's over 200 miles away, whereas many financial advisors and most do-it-yourself investors are only capable of flying perhaps at 1,000 feet, where the horizon is actually less than 40 miles away. In other words, the average person or advisor doesn't have the experience to see or to strategize more than, let's say, 5 or 10 years into the future. They may think that they're seeing further and planning sufficiently, but typically it's not far enough. Certainly not 30 years or more. And that's largely what makes longevity one of the most common and costly hidden dangers in retirement. And now it's time to welcome back Dr. Debbie Lines. Thanks for sticking around.
It's exciting to be here. Thank you again for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. So let's switch gears for just a minute here. You know, studies suggest that a lot of stress and frustration comes from people retiring and having retirement itself be drastically different from what they initially envisioned or initially hoped.
Okay.
Do you find that to be true in your own work?
You know, I do. And I find that the easiest way to overcome that is to manage expectations on the front side of it. Mm-hmm. What do I want my retirement to look like? What does retirement look like in 2019? It's oftentimes different than we think it may be. I mean, I'm 66 years old, and my idea of retirement is different than what my father's was and his father was. Mm-hmm. So I think there are things and easy, quick ways to manage those expectations. I'll give you a really simple example. We talked about it in the first segment. It's managing the isolation piece. It's finding ways that your world doesn't have to be more narrow. It's lifelong learning. There isn't a college out there now that doesn't offer lifelong learning kinds of opportunities, and typically they don't cost money. So that's always one way of managing retirement. The second thing is, what are your passions? What do you love? What have you always wanted to do that you haven't had time to do that you have now? Biophilia is something that's a big buzzword. You'll be hearing it a lot in 2020 and on, and that's bringing the outside indoors. And for retirees who may or may not be able to get where they want to go easily, bringing the outside in is often a really great way to manage mental health. So there's lots of different ways to retire, manage those expectations, and live a long, productive life.
Now, how big of a factor is staying physically active within all this?
You know, the mantra for my business is mind, muscle, mouth. And that's really very simple. And it is, the muscle piece is staying physically active. Movement. Motion is lotion. Second piece is nutrition. What I put into my mouth matters. And the third is mind. If I keep my mind healthy and active, I am going to be as healthy and well as I can be.
And if you think about all those really do go together. Exercise, physical, helps your mental state. What you eat helps your physical state. It all kind of goes together, does it not?
Well, and it's really interesting with facilitative and supportive design. That's what we're really saying. All of those things, plus your physical environment, are all part of wellness. And I think as we're getting older, what you do is amazing because I think it isn't like our parents in retirement. There are so many options that we have now if we just educate ourselves.
Okay. So I'm getting your message loud and clear. When I retire, I'm going to redesign my home to be just like Margaritaville, and it'll keep me in the right state of mind and make me feel like I'm outside and so on. And I don't want to make light of it, but I think a big part of it is just that. A big part of it is keeping you happy. If you think retirement's going to be vacation, it's going to put you in a good mood, well then, get yourself in a place where you have that feeling every single day. We need to leave it there for now. Dr. Lines, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Coming up, experts are calling it the crime of the 21st century. We'll talk about how you can protect yourself and your loved ones from becoming a victim in retirement. We'll be right back. I'm David Scranton, and you're watching The Income Generation.
David J. Scranton, Amazon bestselling author, money manager, and national TV host, is on a mission to educate baby boomers about the need to shift from growth to income. If you're at or near retirement, focusing on income over growth can make all the difference in the quality of your retirement. Each week, David educates America on his Newsmax TV show, The Income Generation, where he provides special reports and more to teach baby boomers about the income model.
Call now for a free copy of David's latest book. Go to soundincomestrategies.com/income to find out more.
For behind-the-scenes photos, retirement planning tips, and upcoming giveaways, follow The Income Generation show on Facebook. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch video clips, guest interviews, and to catch up on past episodes.
If you're near or in retirement, head over to theincomegeneration.com and download your special report written specifically for the needs of the income generation. Again, those born before 1966. I'm David Scranton, and you've been watching The Income Generation. We'll see you all next Sunday.
You're watching Max to Money.
It's better to give than to receive, so they say. But when it comes to your taxes, giving or gifting could save you money down the road.
The benefits of annual gifting is you get some money out of your estate systematically every year. You can give $14,000 to a child, or if you're married, you can give $28,000 per person. But more important than getting money out of your estate, I think it's important while you're young and healthy to help your kids, whether you can improve their lifestyle, help them with education, you can help them buy a new house, you can help them pay for health care, you can fund education for grandkids.
Gifting to family members involves tough decisions about when, how, and in what form to gift. Before doing so, talk with your attorney and your accountant. I'm Karina Brez.
Get more money news at Newsmax.com.
My name is Pray, Kansas Bible Company. I'm just here to deliver this Bible that Mr. Bates ordered.
Bible?
Who is it? What's the trouble?
Something about Benjamin buying a Bible.
Scams and schemes are certainly nothing new. In the movie Paper Moon, a phony Bible salesman preys on widows. In the real world, phony salesmen, phony scammers of all kinds prey predominantly on retirees, typically because they have more money than younger targets. All of us want to believe that we're savvy enough to recognize a con man when we see one, and to believe that we'd never fall victim to a scam, but statistics tell a different story. According to the National Council on Aging, financial scams targeting seniors have become so prevalent that they're now considered the crime of the 21st century. One reason is technology. Hustlers no longer need to go door to door like in Paper Moon. They can, and they do, take advantage of their victims with internet and telemarketing schemes. And in the digital age, they don't need you to hand them cash to gain access to your money. Now, what makes this one of the greatest hidden health-related dangers in retirement is that a large percentage of scams targeting retirees are actually health-related. Scammers know that healthcare and medical expenses are one of the most pressing and one of the most important issues for retirees. And they use that knowledge to build scams around things like health insurance and prescription drugs. They prey on people's basic emotions, and they are hope and fear, with scams that promise to save them money on healthcare costs or protect them from unnecessary losses. In the end, of course, they end up doing just the opposite. Here's the National Council on Aging's rundown of some of the most common medical and healthcare-based scams to watch out for. Number 1, Medicare and/or health insurance scams. Since every U.S. citizen over age 65 qualifies for Medicare, scammers use that to their advantage. For example, they may pose as a Medicare representative to trick you into giving them your personal information. Or they might simply provide bogus medical services at a makeshift mobile clinic, then use the personal information you provide to bill Medicare and to pocket the money. Number 2, counterfeit prescription drugs. Typically, counterfeit drug scams operate on the internet, where older Americans increasingly go to find better prices on medicines. As prescription drug costs have increased, so has the prevalence of this crime. The FDA typically investigates 4 times as many cases today as it did in the 1990s. Now, besides paying money for something that won't help your condition, this scam also carries the risk of purchasing unsafe substances that actually might cause even more harm. Next, watch out for bogus health and anti-aging products. We all have a certain desire, if you will, to look healthy and to look youthful as we get older. And scammers indeed prey on this desire. How? With an endless variety of schemes. There's big money in this phony anti-aging business, whether it's a fake Botox scam like this one in Arizona that netted $1.5 million in barely a year, or bogus homeopathic products that do pretty much nothing. And finally, watch out for funeral and cemetery scams. In one approach, scammers they read obituaries and they called or attended the funeral service of a complete stranger. Why? To take advantage of the grieving widow or widower. Do any of these sound familiar? So yes, in addition to all the high-tech scams out there, there are still hucksters, just like Moses Prey in Paper Moon, who take a personal approach. The best way to protect yourself is to be aware of all the most common scams. Do background research on any individual or company you do business with. Never give personal or financial information over the phone, and report any suspected scam attempt to the proper authorities. Depending upon the incident, those may include local police, your bank, and adult protective services. Now it's time to welcome our next guest, Rick Drew, Sales Director for a retirement community called the Covenant Village of Florida. Rick has been in the senior living industry for the past 8 years. He also has a unique background as both a published author and as a retired law enforcement investigator and enforcement bureau commander. Thanks for joining us today here, Rick, on the Income Generation.
Thank you.
And you're very welcome. Because you're on television, you do realize that you do not have the right to remain silent. But yes, anything you say will be held against you by our viewers. Is that fair enough?
I do have a card for you.
Now they've read your rights. Is that good?
Yes, sir. That's fine.
So, first of all, why do you think seniors and older folks in general tend to be a common target for so many scams and things like that? Why in your law enforcement experience have you found that to be true?
I think it's got a lot to do with the fact that the predators out there are looking for isolated victims. An isolated victim, and if you look at the animal kingdom, the cheetah is looking for a weak link in the herd, and that senior out there all alone is vulnerable, and they don't have any isolation or any insulation to protect them against these predators that are out there looking to do them harm.
Do you think any of it has to do with perhaps concern about diminishing cognitive abilities, maybe a little bit less of ability to make to recognize when there's a scam at hand, anything like that, or do you think it's mostly the isolation factor?
I think isolation plays the biggest part. The other things and issues related to Alzheimer's and dementia is going to be something a little different, but being alone, being vulnerable, being out there, that's what the predator's looking for.
So what can our income generation members, some of our older income generation members, do to protect themselves if they feel as though they're part of a scam of some type? What do you recommend?
Well, number one, if you are a senior there's something you really have to focus on, and that if you go back years ago, there was a movie out with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it was called Kindergarten Cop, and they were talking about stranger danger, and they were teaching the kids, if you saw somebody that you didn't know, or you reach out and say stranger danger. If you're on the phone when someone calls you, you don't know them, just say no. There are going to be a lot of sophisticated scams out there that's going to be attacking and targeting seniors. The most important thing for us to remember is we never give out our personal information, our social security numbers. We don't give out our checking account or our debit card numbers, and we just say no. If they're pressuring you to do something right now, they're not legitimate. Hang up on them. Call the police department, get a hold of a family member, and let them know what's going on.
And if somebody calls and says they're from the IRS,
you know that's not
you
true.
know that's definitely not true. The IRS doesn't call. They simply send annoying letters. That's right.
Letters, that's
the
true.
nastygram. That's correct. So now, what if our income generation member is just a family member, a loved one, who suspects that one of their loved ones who's a senior, maybe their mom or dad or even older brother or sister, is a victim of a scam and maybe afraid to come forward? What do you recommend that friend or family member do?
You're going to have to do two things. Number one, you're going to have to get involved with law enforcement. If there's a scam going on and your parent or a loved one is vulnerable to that and they've been victimized and you think they have, they're not the only person that has been. These scam artists are out there working against a lot of folks, so you need to notify local law enforcement. There's probably a task force or something already working on that particular scam. And number two, the banking institution has to be notified immediately in the event there has been some vulnerability to your banking account.
So in other words, don't be embarrassed to come forward. You're not the only one.
Nope.
There's other people. It's almost like you know, a lot of rape victims sometimes are embarrassed to come forward. It's kind of the same thing here. Don't be embarrassed. You're not the only one, and maybe you could prevent others from being victimized as you were. Is
Absolutely.
that generally good advice?
That's very good advice.
20 seconds or less. Are people safer or at more risk if they live in a retirement community, in your opinion, to scams?
There is insulation built around us in a retirement community, and that's going to provide you protection. You're not going to be that lone, creature out there that's waiting for the predator to attack you.
You're not the one that fell back from the herd.
You're safer, much
Got
safer.
It. Got it. Good analogy, too. I love that. Stay with us. We want you back for another segment. You stay with us, too. We have more here on The Income Generation right after the commercial break. I'm here with Rick Drew. You're watching The Income Generation, and I'm David Scranton. We'll be right back.
Read David J. Scranton's groundbreaking new book, Return on Principle, 7 Core Values to Help Protect Your Money in Good Times and Bad. Discover practical solutions to the financial challenges facing today's generation of retirees and near retirees. Learn the truth about Wall Street, the financial media, and the secrets they try to hide from everyday investors. This isn't just another book about investing. Working Americans who have lived through 2 major stock market crashes and the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression in the past 16 years don't need another book about investing. David Scranton's approach to financial planning is a holistic system designed for maximum protection, strategic growth, and reliable income regardless of market conditions. Stop planning for retirement with your fingers crossed. Read Return on Principle, 7 Core Values to Help Protect Your Money in Good Times and Bad. Available now.
So let's focus briefly again on longevity, undoubtedly the most complex and problematic hidden danger in retirement. According to the Centers for Disease Control, for an average couple today in their 60s, there's a 50% chance that at least one of them will live into their 90s. Now, while that's nice in one respect, it could certainly become a major problem considering that another statistic we discuss frequently on this show, and that's the ever-rising cost of health care. Since 1948, the price of medical care has grown at an average annual rate of 5.3%, compared to 3.5% for the CPI index overall. That means that healthcare and medical costs are essentially doubling every 12 years. It also means by the time a couple in their 60s today reaches their 90s, if they should need full-time in-home healthcare, the costs may have risen from the current estimate of $200,000 to $250,000 a year to between $600,000 and $800,000 each and every year. Yet studies show that 69% of baby boomers and 66% of retirees overall estimate their healthcare costs in retirement to be just $100,000 or less cumulative. That means the majority of boomers are clearly underestimating the potential hidden dangers of longevity. And it isn't just the amount that matters where longevity is concerned. Your investment strategy is equally as important. And here's why. You may have heard of this 4% rule. We talk about it all the time on the show. It states that for average investors, the most that you would be able to draw from your retirement accounts each year without the risk of running out of money is 4% of that account each and every year. But a recent study by Morningstar found that in today's environment of low interest rates and overvalued stocks, the safe withdrawal rate for average investors now stands at only 2.8%. The study concludes that there is still a 10% chance of depleting your assets even if you do withdraw only 2.8% per year. Why? Because you're withdrawing money from your accounts to meet your income needs. So even at just 2.8%, you're still dependent upon how the markets grow to replace these annual withdrawals. But as we all know, the markets fluctuate, and sometimes dramatically. And after the age of 50 or so, you start to lose the luxury of time to recoup big losses. This is where your longevity becomes a huge variable when determining a lump sum. Cannibalizing your assets may not matter if you only live 10 years after retirement. But if you live longer, the question of running out of money becomes a race against time. Your longevity is much less a factor if your income, your cash flow, isn't coming from principal, but instead coming from interest and dividends, from true income. And that, again, is why longevity is one of the main reasons it's so incredibly important to make that paradigm shift shortly after the age of 50 from a growth-oriented mindset to one focused on protection and income. Now it's time to welcome back Rick Drew, Sales Director for Covenant Village of Florida, a senior living facility. Rick, thanks so much for sticking around.
You're very welcome.
So with your experience in retirement communities, your experience as a law enforcement officer, but it's interesting, I know you also do some teaching right now, some education workshops, if you will, things about Alzheimer's and dementia. Mm-hmm. So two of them specifically, the evolution of retirement and the art of aging well. Tell our viewers about what those encompass, please.
Well, there's a problem right now in our society in that we're living longer. And it shouldn't be a problem. You know, back in the 60s, the average life expectancy for a female was 60, 65, 67. Today we're living to be 80 and 85, and we're more susceptible to these age-related diseases. In the 60s, you never heard of dementia or Alzheimer's or even COPT. They weren't existent. Now they're out there, they're plaguing us, and they're very expensive, and if we don't have plans for them, it's going to devastate our finances and our families.
So what tips do you have for income generation members who might be concerned about some of these mental health issues down the road?
Don't pretend like it's not going to happen. 1 in 3 people are going to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia. It's a very, very bad disease for us to be concerned about. If you don't have a plan, it can devastate you, your family, and your family's finances. Have a medical surrogate, get someone as your POA, and don't be afraid to talk about it.
Yeah, once again, don't be afraid to come forward. I love it. That's all your years as a law enforcement officer. Yep. You know that to be true. Last question, perhaps the most important, the most relevant to what you're doing currently is, how does one choose the retirement facility or assisted care facility that's right for them, that's best for them?
Well, you have 3 or 4 different things you're looking at. There's skilled nursing facilities. There is a website that Medicare has out there where they actually go in and rate these medical facilities or these skilled nursing communities. If you're looking for something, you're actually going to the place, do the sniff test first when you walk in. If it doesn't smell right, it's probably not. It's not clean the way it should be. If you're looking for assisted living, David, you want a place that you're going to get the activities that you'd like for your loved one to have. But most importantly, don't confuse assisted living with independent living. A lot of children would say, Mom, slow down now, she needs to go to assisted living. But really what she needs is a boost and moving the community that's vibrant. Right. Like Covenant Village of Florida, we just have a lot of activities to keep people healthy.
She needs that social interaction, and that's great. So Rick, thanks so much for being on the show today.
You're very welcome.
You've been a great help. Thank you. And you stay with us. We'll be right back here on The Income Generation. I'm David Scranton. We'll be back in a moment.
just worry about you. That's
Don't start with that nursing home business again.
It's not a nursing home. How many times do I gotta say this? It's a retirement community.
Most retirees would rather stay in their own homes as they grow older if their health allows it. And of course, that's understandable, as our homes are typically where we feel the most comfortable. However, there could be dangers lurking there that retirees themselves may not even realize. That's where we want to bring in professional organizer Emma Jaluga, the founder of Organize to Minimize. This company has a senior services division which specializes in helping seniors organize and downsize their homes. They also help seniors and their families with the emotional and physical aspects of relocation. Emma, thanks so much for being part of the show today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So tell us, what are some of the dangers for elderly folks that want to stay in the comfort of their own homes, maybe just a little bit past the point where they should?
It happens a lot. One of our main, probably one of the main things is the isolation. A lot of people think that they're going to stay in their own home and that they'll have friends come round, but what we have is a lot of locations where the younger people are now coming into the communities and the older people are moving on out. The other thing is obviously the falling. A lot of falls happen. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of dangers in the home, mm-hmm. specifically in the home. So, with the tripping over of rugs and things like that, we basically have we've had people in the past that two of people are moving into a community, one's had a fall and now one's going into rehab and then independent and in assisted.
So I wouldn't consider falling over a rug or something like that to be necessarily a dangerous item, but there probably also are some dangerous items themselves in the home that seniors need to be careful of.
Yeah, medications. Okay. Out-of-date medications is one of the biggest things that we come across. And the fact that we're part of NASM, which is the National Association of Senior Move Managers, we have a code of ethics that we can't take those with us. Out-of-date food, they have closets in the home where they need to get into something and they reach too high and something falls on top of them. So they're the more dangers in the home person.
Sure, physical dangers themselves. So in the 40 seconds or so we have left in this segment, I bet you see a lot of hoarding in the homes of seniors. Tell us a little bit about that.
We do. Most people have been in their houses 20 years plus. And with the hoarding, obviously, if it's mental health care that we need to refer them to a therapist, we have options of doing that. Okay. And we also have the ways to facilitate that. And if it's something we can help them with the downsizing, basically we can go in and take pictures of the items that they want to take, put them on a digital camera, and then just give them the photographs instead of taking the pieces with them. We do a lot of downsizing, And
so they still feel like they have the item, even though
but they don't physically have it.
Right, so now you could downsize the house and save them some money and make them safer without, yeah. It's funny, we tend to joke a lot about hoarding in general, but the reality of it is it's a serious issue. So Emma, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us today for another episode of The Income Generation. I'd also like to thank you, our new and returning viewers. In the recent Oscar-winning documentary Free Solo, rock climber Alex Honnold scales a 3,000-foot rock formation in Yosemite National Park without a rope. Risky? Most people would say that word doesn't even begin to describe this particular feat. But if you watch the film, you know that only the last 20 minutes are devoted to Honnold's actual climb. The first 2/3 of the film are about his years-long preparation. Before ever setting foot on the rock without a rope, Honnold climbed it over and over and over again with a rope until he knew every crack and every crevice. The key was preparation. Whether you're climbing a mountain without a rope or planning for your retirement, here are a few tips. Start thinking about retirement as a transitional process rather than an event. Understand that it comes with more changes than you probably realize, and that achieving the retirement that you want starts with identifying your specific retirement goals. Next, be aware that retirement increases your danger of being targeted by scammers, many of whom use healthcare and medical expenses as part of their ploy. Stay educated about the most common scams and approach every new transaction with healthy skepticism. And finally, make sure your retirement strategy doesn't underestimate the potential impacts of longevity. And remember, the best way to avoid this danger is to create your own plan with the help of an advisor who is capable of flying at 30,000 feet. That means an advisor with the expertise to help you strategize and prepare for 30 years or more of dependable retirement income. Thanks for watching. If you're close to retirement and you really want to know how to protect and maximize your money, it's absolutely essential that you stay informed and up to date. And as you know, right here is where you can do it on the Income Generation. I'm David Scranton, and we'll see you next week.
David J. Scranton, Amazon bestselling author, money manager, and national TV host, is on a mission to educate baby boomers about the need to shift from growth to income. If you're at or near retirement, focusing on income over growth can make all the difference in the quality of your retirement. Each week, David educates America on his Newsmax TV show, The Income Generation, where he provides special reports and more to teach baby boomers about the income model.
Call now for a free copy of David's latest book. Go to soundincomestrategies.com/income to find out more.
If you're near or in retirement, head over to theincomegeneration.com and download your special report written specifically for the needs of the income generation, again, those born before 1966. I'm David Scranton, and you've been watching The Income Generation. We'll see you all next Sunday.